Hello, I am Anita Bentata and I'm a psychotherapist, and I wrote this book, The Wolf in a Suit, and in it I tell in part one my story of me escaping domestic violence many years ago with my young children, and part two, which is 2/3 of the book, I am unpacking information that I felt frustrated about because people still didn't understand, and even people in the field didn't know or understand these things. And so I share in each chapter some vital information, and I share it through fairy tales. So I share it through my retelling of each of the fairy tales. I reinterpret them, and I start with Little Red Riding Hood, which is kind of like my story. And Cinderella is one of the stories in it as well. But there's about 10 or 11 in this book. But today I'm not talking about the fairy tales in this book. I am talking about Enlightening Cinderella. I have so many books on love and relationships, and I love reading and I love sharing ideas. And so I thought, I'm a fast reader. So I thought I'm going to read my books, the ones that have been sitting on my bookshelf or ones that I've read already, and share my reviews of them and share some little points about them. So this is a really great concept, this book that Suzanne Harrill decided to do, because she decided to write from 10 years after Cinderella and Prince Charming got together, and what happened in their marriage after they got married. And she's a therapist like me. She's a family therapist, marriage and family therapist. And so she's using the fairy godmother in a different way to the way I use the fairy godmother in my book and Cinderella's relationship to explore about their marriage. So I'm going to read little bits out of it, and I'll add some comments along the way. So I'm going to come to the first section that I thought, where she talks a little bit about the fairy tale. For many, the story of Cinderella nourishes the fantasy of finding a perfect partner, a Prince Charming. Yeah. And according to the fairy tale interpretation, Cinderella's father, prior to embarking on an extended trip, asked each of his three daughters what gift she wished him to bring back. The two stepsisters asked for material things, while Cinderella asked for a branch from a hazelnut tree. Cinderella received the branch and planted it on the grave of her mother. Over the years, Cinderella's tears watered the branch and it grew into a hazelnut tree. This symbolises the healing process Cinderella went through in grieving the unmothered child within and growing into her new life. At a very deep level, it represents learning to mother oneself. Many of us are involved in just this type of healing. So what Suzanne is saying in her book is that we must heal, her words are heal ourselves, to move beyond the misconceptions about life and relationship that we've absorbed from early childhood conditioning. And I absolutely agree that it's up to us. We can't ask someone else to make things better for us. However, as I was reading her book, I did have some things that I don't agree with, because the fairy godmother keeps saying it can take years. You've got to grieve this. You've got to unpack all of this stuff to do with childhood, and you didn't realize you were being abused here, and with the stepmother, and all of these things that you've got to work through all of that. But I will get back to my thoughts about that as we go along. So I'm going to read a little bit more. So Cinderella's wondering, is her marriage going to be a happily ever after? Everybody seems to think it is. She hears it over and over. Her stepsisters and mother remind her practically every time they cross paths. And she says, Cinderella says, what possible excuse do I have for being unhappy? I live a lavish lifestyle in a luxurious castle. I'm up to my vaulted ceilings in gorgeous gowns and have at least 300 pairs of glass slippers. More importantly, I have 2 wonderful children and love being a mother. But in spite of all this, I feel terribly lonely, especially right after I've been around Charming. He always seems so happy and enthusiastic, running his kingdom and preparing for the day when he will be king. Cinderella cried out in exasperation. I don't have that kind of enthusiasm for my life. On the contrary, I feel as barren as a field after a harvest, as empty as a pond in a drought. Charming doesn't excite me anymore, and I don't seem to turn him on either. He's obviously not the soulmate I thought I found 10 years ago, and I'm certainly not living happily ever after. What's wrong? Why am I so miserable? What am I doing to deserve this? I need help. And I think no matter what a relationship is, we can sometimes feel this, whether there's toxic elements in the relationship or things are good, we can feel an emptiness. And I think that she captures that really well. And in my program, the Essentials Method, we have a module all about love and relationships, and I share my perspective about love and relationships and how we often project onto the other person for them to be the one to fulfill us and for us to have good times with them, for us to feel content and satisfied. And Suzanne has some similarities in her approach with mine, though I don't do that past things based on neuroscience. We don't need to. It slows things down and actually keeps deepening those neural pathways of the old stories that are stressful or traumatic. And we don't need to go there to have closure, but we need to take care of ourselves. And how we take care of ourselves, Suzanne does it in a different way to me, but I really love how she talks about we've got to stop looking for our partner or the relationship to fulfill us. So let's go to where she talks a bit about the term soulmate, that humans, the fairy godmother saying this. Soulmate is a term you humans have invented to explain your desire to reawaken feelings of wholeness and completeness within yourselves. Since you identify primarily with the physical world, you tend to forget about the spiritual part of your nature. When you can't find fulfillment in yourself, you look for it in someone else, a husband, a lover, or even a child, which, by the way, diminishes your personal power. And again, I do agree with that. Even though how she goes about things and how I do is different, absolutely. What I say is that we are more non-physical than physical. Our life energy is non-physical. Can't see it. Yeah. Our thoughts and our feelings are non-physical. And yet those 3 things are the biggest things in our daily life that, depending on how they are, how we feel and what choices we step into in our daily connections with ourselves and others. It's really interesting and important, I believe, to explore our spiritual side, and that can be very unique and individual, but our beliefs about why we're here, what is there that's greater than us, whether it's a religious element or nature, or life energy or love, whatever it is that you believe, it's really important to look at our spiritual beliefs, because we can tap into them. But often I find people have their spiritual or religious beliefs and then they have their life, and they're quite separate in a sense, in that their life isn't being supported by the spiritual beliefs in a generative, expansive way. So absolutely, we need to look at our spirituality. I think this is why we get such a longing for someone else, because we often don't connect to that wisdom within, or that which is greater than us. And so we're seeking for a depth of experience from our partner that is meant to be about us doing that in our own journey. So let's go to another page and let me find the section I wanted to read. But that could take forever. So there's Cinderella talking. She's the fairy godmother saying, you've got to understand certain things, you've got to be able to integrate them and sort out a whole lot of things. And so Cinderella's saying, I don't want this to consume a lot of time. Just give me something to make this tight feeling in my stomach go away. Can't you just wave your magic wand and say abracadabra or something? Implored Cinderella. So I remember there was a period of time in my practice where beside my chair where the clients would sit, I had a wand with all sparkles in it, you know, the ones that you can move and all the different things, little stars and glitter move around in there. And I used to have that there because I did have clients sometimes say they wanted a magic wand. And there is a magic wand, but very often we go looking for it outside of us. And very often most people do not understand the way the brain works and how to work with the brain and our feelings to dissolve and extinguish old neural pathways so that they can be free. And we don't know how to connect to the magic within ourselves. And so Suzanne's method is, as I said, doing a lot of unpacking about the past and understanding it. But insight and understanding isn't what changes our relationship to the past or our involuntary beliefs and responses. There's something far greater that's far more powerful and faster. And that's one of the things I teach in my method. So we can find the magic wand within ourselves and accelerate things and have it be a easier, more satisfying, lighter journey than the heavy journey that is being prescribed here. So let's see, we'll go to... So at the end of each chapter in here, it's really great because there's some journal questions for you to answer, and that's the homework that each time the fairy godmother meets with Cinderella to help her with her marriage, she gives her some information and then some journal questions, and Cinderella's to go away and answer those journal questions before she sees the fairy godmother again. So one of these journal questions, which I really like, is under what circumstances do you get off track and find yourself wanting another person to fill you up emotionally, to make you feel whole and happy? What can you do differently to meet your own needs? I'm a real advocate of being active within yourself. Very often we'll start to be judging and critical and blaming our partner, and we need to look at, what can I do so I feel happy? Or if something's bothering me, what can I do to take care of myself with this, instead of needing the other person to change? They are their own person. We are all living our lives in the way we want to, and we shouldn't be trying to control someone else. It gets messy and toxic, and it builds more issues, I find, when you keep saying, I need you to change, I need you to do this. Instead, we can reflect on, what is it that I need to do so I feel well-being in this moment, rather than asking someone else to do something for you to feel better. It gives you so much more power instead of I need you to be a particular way for me to feel good. It's like, well, what do I need to do right now so that I feel good? And taking care of yourself, instead of, very often I think we can get into habits of explaining and educating and talking, wanting the other person to agree with us, and they've got the free will and the entirely different life journey to disagree or to see things differently. So it's like taking back the power and go, what do I need to do right now? And we can do it in a respectful way, absolutely, not in a rude, dumping, judging way. I'm talking about clean and clearly. I want to be able to feel better right now, and I don't want to be waiting for my partner to say or do something or agree with me for me to feel good. So what is it that I can do? Okay, let's go on to a bit more. So the fairy godmother is saying these situations are unpleasant because you are looking at them through the eyes of the person you think you should be. Because Prince Charming was wanting Cinderella to ride a horse and go in these tournaments and things, and Cinderella wasn't interested. But she wanted to share something with Prince Charming, and so she was feeling conflicted about what she wanted to do. So getting back to what the fairy godmother's saying. Always be aware of shoulds and oughts. Usually when you think you should be doing something, the value you place on the activity is not coming from within you. The value is coming from someone else. So rule number 1 is pay attention to what you want and catch yourself when you think or say, I should. I love that, and it's really aligned with the things I say. I talk about with boundaries, instead of thinking what's the right thing to do, which is then we're stepping outside of ourselves and seeing the situation through the eyes of another person, of what's right for me right now, because boundaries can change moment to moment, person to person, depending on if you're tired, you've got a lot on your plate, or whatever. And so to be able to be flexibly responsive. So I'm just going to repeat that first sentence. These situations are unpleasant because you are looking at them through the eyes of the person you think you should be. So freeing yourself from that you think you should be a particular way, and accepting and allowing, this is how I am right now, this is what I want and need right now, is really, really important. Okay. Now let me find. So the fairy godmother says to Cinderella, you are a very giving person and derive a lot of pleasure from pleasing others, Cindy. So you may find it extremely difficult to tell the difference between what you really want and what others want for you. When you first stop doing a should behavior, be prepared to feel mixed up for a while. Don't be surprised to feel guilty for not pleasing Charming or whomever it is. That will change. As you become convinced of the need to be your own authority, you will take risks and willingly pay the cost, whether positive or negative. Over time, your choices will become progressively wiser, more closely matching the desires of your true self. Again, I love it. I think Suzanne's got a beautiful way of writing. It's very readable, and I totally agree with that. So I also want to say another of those statements again. You're a very giving person and derive a lot of pleasure from pleasing others, so you may find it extremely difficult to tell the difference between what you really want and what others want for you. And often I find when I'm working with people that they think they can tell the difference, but there's layers of subtlety, of emotional expectations and beliefs that sometimes clouds what's really true. So being able to develop some skills to be able to really discern and differentiate what's really me and what's not me can be really, really helpful. Okay, let's jump ahead to another really juicy bit. So the fairy godmother is wanting to educate Cinderella about the different things that can happen in a relationship that create a separation between the two, less intimacy. So she's talking about hidden agendas. A person with a hidden agenda seems to be trying to accomplish one thing, but is actually after something else. That's why the agenda is said to be hidden. Sometimes the person with the hidden agenda doesn't even realize what she or he is doing. Her motives are subconscious. An example is when a person who feels insecure and unloved goes to her partner with a big hug and says, "I love you," wanting the partner to hug back and say, "I love you too." She appears to be giving love, but she's much more interested in getting love and probably doesn't even realize it. Yeah. And then the fairy godmother goes on to talk about game playing. Yeah. A game player is unwilling to be direct or straight with the partner because she believes her partner is incapable of responding to directness, or that they will get angry and refuse her requests. So she uses guilt, anger, or charm to manipulate her partner rather than tell the truth about what she wants and needs. For example, someone who is afraid to voice her opinions about how money is spent might pretend that she doesn't care or is too scattered to pay attention to the little details like overspending. Yeah, it's some good stuff in here, isn't there? Okay, so now the fairy godmother is talking a little bit about that romantic first period in a relationship and how that doesn't continue. So he spent a lot of time with you during the first couple of years, didn't he? And this is Cinderella now. Yes, he was very passionate and affectionate. We made love all the time. He frequently came back to the castle in the middle of the day to surprise me with flowers or a gift. And of course, we always ended up in bed. He was available whenever I wanted to talk to, added Cinderella, as if to ease her embarrassment. Now it's the fairy godmother. You saw the best side of Charming during the early years of your marriage, fairy godmother explained. He could only maintain that side during the romantic love stage of the relationship, however, while he was infatuated. He relished your dependency on him because he was obsessed with you, but eventually, as his infatuation faded, he grew tired of the dependency. He felt trapped and smothered by it. Your dependency may have reminded him unconsciously of his relationship with his mother. She doted on him as a child, wanted to know everything he was thinking and every detail of his days. If he did not want to spend time with her, she pouted. He learned to distance himself emotionally and not participate in his mother's smothering. When he was around his mother, he checked out, so to speak. Physically, he was there, but mentally, he was somewhere else. He could daydream while looking her in the face and even repeat her words if questioned. He survived by being emotionally cool, distant, and aloof. You interpreted... Okay, let me go back a little bit. So Charming pulled away from you when you started to remind him of his mother. He returned to managing the kingdom and resumed his training to be king. You interpreted this withdrawal to mean he was less in love with you. What looked like an expanding horizon to him represented emotional distance to you. And this is the thing that I have seen a lot over the decades. There's been a pattern of what I've seen with clients of how we label and how we interpret things may have a truth to it, but there may be a bigger truth. And when we can get to the bigger truth, then we have a way through for a progression and a generativity to it, rather than the limited feeling of, oh, he's just distancing from me, he's disconnected from me, he's not interested in me, I'm not important to him. All those kinds of things are an interpretation and not necessarily accurate. And so it's really important that we understand more about how we label things and how we interpret things. And that's why it's useful to have a guide with that, because very often we don't even realize the things that we're labeling that is closing off that progression and that generativity for us. And so in my work now, I am a facilitator and a mentor to help people to know how to use their brain and how to relabel things and how to progress that, rather than keep looping in to those old labelings and interpretations and perceptions that actually just keep limiting us and repeating what we've believed, instead of progressing to something new and taking us forward in life. So let's see. Just find the next section. It was his behaviour. This is the fairy godmother. It was his behaviour you didn't like, not his inner essence or true self. He could no longer be what you wanted him to be because he had another side you didn't know. He had needs that were not being met. To understand Charming, you have to look beyond his behaviours to see what's motivating him. At the time, for instance, he may have returned to the jousting scene because he needed more physical activity, or maybe he needed more time to run the castle or prepare for his competitive tournaments. He'd stopped doing those things when you were first married. To ease his guilt over not spending time with you, he strongly encouraged your riding lessons and entered you in tournaments. You stopped some of your activities too, like meditating and talking with the animals. So the things that we don't name to each other, and how we try and fix it without even talking about it, but we're trying to fix the other person instead of being direct and clear about, this is what I need. And that can be really, and this is what I'm going to do for what I need. It can reduce the stress in a relationship so much to have a partner say, I'm needing some more physical activity, or I'm needing to have my space away so I can reconnect to myself, so I can come back and be in the relationship recharged and energized. And that can be a great thing for a relationship, rather than the pressure that we've got to keep sustaining each other. It really helps to have that space away to be able to think and reconnect to yourself, rather than our system often keeps turning to what's best for the relationship. But the relationship is made up of two people, and we need to fill our own cup to be able to look after the relationship. So I love the way she named that. And it takes so much pressure off when we can be direct and clear with each other about, this is what I need. And to be able to tell ourselves that because that person needs that, and it's not to do with me in how they're getting filled, it doesn't equate to they love me less. We often have an insecure element to ourselves, and we link an interpretation to us feeling abandoned or rejected. And so there's a way of being able to take care of that part that feels insecure without needing the other person to keep reassuring us or being there for us, because that can suffocate the growth of the relationship. Let's go on and find the next section. Let me find the words. Infatuation and romantic love subside. A very important stage emerges. Healthy relationships go through a period of continuing power struggles. During this stage, each partner tries to mold the other into the ideal mate. As part of this process, many couples bicker and fight. Some launch a cold war and start avoiding the more sensitive areas of conflict. since neither Cinderella nor Charming were ready to risk confrontation, their lives had become more and more separate and devoid of intimacy and sharing. They avoided conflict, at some level agreeing not to argue and fight openly, yet the tension and pain remained even without confrontation. I think these examples that the fairy godmother gives are very relatable to many people. Now, one of the homeworks that she gives Cinderella is to write a poem. And Cinderella comes back the next week and shares 3 poems, but I'm just going to read one. I remember. It is you I ask as I cry silently, to be there for me, to be strong, to touch me and to hold me, so I will feel secure. When in reality I yearn from that place inside of me. Now I remember how it is supposed to be. You are not the one to fill me up. It must come from the soul of my being. I release the pain of feeling separate from you. I heal from within and trust instead that the spirit within me will reveal true security, love from the source of me. I now am nourished, filled from within. I thought that was really beautiful. And now, so the fairy godmother's talking about sometimes it can take years of work. Yeah. And Cinderella says, but how can Charming and I overcome years of emotional separation? Change requires so much work. And the fairy godmother says, yes, it is a lot of work, but time will go by whether you do the work or not. Imagine things staying pretty much the same and then look 5 years into the future. What does it feel like? Asked fairy godmother. Heavy, replied Cinderella. Now imagine devoting time and attention to these issues and picture the situation 5 years from now. How does that feel? Light, smiled Cinderella. You're right. I really must go forward and meet these challenges, even if it's difficult and slow going at times. One of the things I teach in my method is that it's not work. Your life is precious, and the moment that you're living is the only moment that matters, because that's the moment that we're existing in and that we want to feel good in the moment. We don't want to, I'll work so I can feel better later. We want to feel good now. So in the Essentials method, I show you how instead of doing work, how you can transform. So yes, there's a progression that will happen and things will get easier and better, but how you can feel good immediately. And it can feel exhilarating to feel how quickly you can shift and feel better. It's wonderful. I noticed it in my own life when I started testing my theories and understandings after working in the field for nearly 3 decades. And it's continuing to transform my life. And I developed this method because I could see gaps even in the best methods that I'd been trained in, and gaps in how I had as a client journeyed with it, and there were still gaps and triggers even despite doing the best therapy and for years and years. And so I started questioning and developed my own program and tested it on myself, and I'm having mind-blowing results in my own personal life, let alone with people that I journey with. So now a little bit more, because I really enjoyed reading this book. I'm going to have fun reading all of these stories and sharing some tidbits with you. So now the fairy godmother says, you and only you are in charge of your life. Now that you're an adult, you're responsible for all the choices in your life, even the ones you make unconsciously or think someone like Charming is making for you. And I agree with that. And in my program, we do experiments so that you can not have to take on anything that I'm saying to be true, that you experiment and you find out for yourself how you can be in charge of your life and how you can change things and switch things up from just repeating what has always been. All right. So now the fairy godmother is talking about self-esteem. Your self-esteem, which serves as the very foundation of your life, is a reflection of how well you love and accept your true self. When I say your true self, I'm not referring to the conditioned self of childhood or to your actions or to who you think you should be. Your true self is your spiritual essence, who you are deep inside on a spiritual level. Only you can be you. Your job is to remember the blueprint of your soul and to express it to the best of your abilities. As you grow in awareness, you will learn that you have the personal power to live an abundant, creative, loving, exciting life with or without Prince Charming. And that, I think, is really important, that when we can love and want to be with someone but not be attached to that they need to be there, then you can go to deeper levels of intimacy when you can not give them hooks that they just want to be with you because you're a joy to be with and fun to be with, rather than I need you to be there to make me whole or to look after some area in my life, and vice versa. Self-esteem is so important. To have a truly intimate, satisfying relationship, it's all about the self, because as I said before, you've got two people and the relationship is the third body, and we need to have a connection with ourselves and our creative power to create in our life, to be able to then feed and nourish the third body, the relationship. So let me just go to the next. So I'm not going to read all of this out, but there's 3 pages here of signs of low self-esteem, which are really interesting, and they can help us to recognize where we are and what needs taking care of. And the 3 pages also include signs of high self-esteem. And so that can be a really valuable list. And wait till the end, because I've got something really special to tell you about this book. Okay. So, and then Suzanne Harrill has developed her own self-esteem inventory, which is quite a good one, which is a few pages again. And so they can be really great markers to what we need to open up to more in ourselves. Like, I'm not responsible for anyone else's actions, needs, thoughts, moods, or feelings, only for my own, with the exception of my own young children. And that's exactly what I say too, and I just picked that one random. Another one she's got in her inventory is, I always tell myself the truth about what I'm feeling. So I'm worthy simply for who I am, not what I do. I do not have to earn my worthiness. So there's a beautiful list here of an inventory for self-esteem. I love it. And it's not a test. It's just to help you to identify what areas need to have some support from you to take care of. Nearly done with sharing bits. Now, where is... So Fairy Godmother says, physical meetings between Charming and Cinderella may at times take place less often than they do right now. I think you'll find that is okay, because the times you do have together will be of a much higher quality. They will not be based solely on romantic fulfillment like they were in the first stage of the relationship, nor will they be spent bickering like they are now in the second stage. You'll have much to talk about because you'll both have new experiences to share, explained Fairy Godmother. And so I loved that. So now, second last bit. She's got a great list with, at the end of each chapter, as well as the activities to journal write, and which a lot of them, as I said, I don't agree with, because they are focusing more on the past instead of how do you build what you need for now? How do you take care of now? And insights don't change neural pathways, feelings do. So if we don't know how to take care of our feelings, and we all know our feelings don't feel held by logic, they need to be enveloped by feelings. And so there's a specific way to take care of our feelings and build those new neural pathways. But so I don't, as I said, agree with a lot of her homeworks, but she's also at the end of each chapter, she does a little summary of the points the fairy godmother said. And there's one here that I think is really interesting. Some ways that you hide from yourself and project your own thoughts and feelings onto another. So becoming more clear about what we're doing so that we can take our power back and have different choices. So making up reasons why another person is in a bad mood without checking with them. So that's what I would also term as mislabeling, yeah, and our perceptions and interpretations. There's a massive thing in our development of self as well as our relationships with others. Is massive in my experience. Finishing another person's sentences, spending more time on another person's problem than on your own, acting defensive and assuming someone is blaming you for something. So there's a few more, but these are all different ways we hide from ourselves and project our thoughts and feelings onto another. So she's got a great list there. You're going to love what I'm going to be sharing with you very, very shortly. And it is important to remember that being right does not solve relationship problems. Now, I want to tell you some things. That in finishing the book, what Suzanne does is she gives you two options. There's, in the end, Prince Charming comes along to have the sessions with the fairy godmother and Cinderella. And over time, then it comes to, there's two chapters at the end. One where Cinderella and Prince Charming realize that they want to go separate ways, and another chapter where they work it out through the things that arose from their sessions with the fairy godmother. So the fairy godmother advises on separation and on staying together and expanding the relationship, which is really interesting, both of those different directions and the information and advice that she gives. So what I wanted to also say is I then went and looked on Suzanne's website, and she's retired now, but you can download this book for free with other books of hers from her website. So that's a bonus. If you liked the tidbits that I shared and you want to read more, you can download it from her website. And if you want to hear more about my program, and I can also email you out some information about what my program is based on and what are the modules about and my background, or we can have a conversation to see if it's a good fit for you. So you're welcome to send me a message. You can go to my website. The website is listed below in the blurb about this reading and review. And I'd love to hear from you. And if there's a book that you would like me to review to do with love and relationships, let me know. I might have it and I'll bump it up on the section of books that I'm going to review. I have a range of books. Some you will know about and some you won't. Some of them are quite psychological. Some of them are quite left of field. There's an enormous range of books, and Some of them are current books and some of them are older books, but they all have something of value that I want to share with you. So I look forward to seeing you on the next review, and I'd love it if you can like and subscribe to my channel if you liked and enjoyed this review, and if you want to be notified of when I upload the next review, then please like and subscribe, and please share the link with friends or family that you think would enjoy hearing this review or benefit from it. Have a beautiful day, and I look forward to seeing you on the next story.